Okay, so I want to respond back to what we were talking about on WYEP. There was a great interview with Ron in this post. I just want to reaffirm that, like, it's probably going to be it. I'm not an expert, so please know that when I say journalism malpractice, they don't mean every journalist is out there making false accusations. At the same time, this is where it involves like the Second Amendment, First Amendment, and this is a constitutional thing. All right. So the damages involved go into millions and millions of dollars. Anytime you put out something, they want you to have refer to sources, which I gave you some sources, so that you can go ahead and go forward and say the things you need to say. Because I think when you have gone to court, which that's what we did, and I offer some anecdotal information here. Urban Dictionary referring to trifling. Yeah, we're going to talk about how trifling it is to be around abusers that are shady and trying to pull some bolt. So we gave you a source here, Urban Dictionary, for trifling. So it's the Urban Dictionary for saying that these individuals that go into the troubled neighborhoods that sexually abuse children, like what happened at Penn State Beavers, where we're going to go with this. I'm just going to say it's the same thing. It's no different than Pizzagate. It's no different. Not one time has there ever been, and have you ever noticed when the offenders are out there abusing children that there's certain level of what is that? What do they mean when they say certain level of I don't, what do they call that? I don't know. They have there's a certain level of responsibility when you have children around, and that's a huge responsibility that I wouldn't take it lightly, put it that way, because you're dealing with lives. One, you're dealing with safety issues. So the whole point to having a football team, what obviously has nothing to do with football, has everything to do with the Second Mile program. And these programs are designed to, quote, help the troubled youth, only to abuse the children. This is the crime. This is it. This is what we've been through. And it sounds like a great idea to have a program that's designed to help children. That's always been the case. So they're going to go through every program where children are involved. There are going to be issues because, first of all, this is going back to what we were talking about a couple years ago about the Laura Silsby case, about what happened to those children. What is the update? What is the story? And where are these children? Like what? And yes, and it's going to be one of those. It is so hard to get past this, and it's going to be very difficult for some of you when they don't. And this is what I was troubled by this, because this has nothing to do with the parents, has everything to do with why wouldn't they put their photos up? Why not? Why didn't they put my family's photos up when we were going through this and we were abused? Why did they only mention a few names? I'm going to pull up the Pittsburgh Press photos, images, and all this stuff. Not one mention about my family in the story. And I'm going to tell you, there are other members of my family who have been in the modeling industry and also are modeling for Versace. So you can go ahead and start talking about what happened, because I'm pretty sure they don't just make this stuff up either. My cousin used to be a model for 17 magazine, and a lot of you probably have met some of those creeps, and I've met some of you down in Washington, D.C., who ended up being, what was it? Let me add to it. Barney Frank was a voyeur watching these dudes have sex down in Washington, D.C. I met a prostitute from Washington, D.C., who basically told me the whole story about how Barney Frank would stare at these dudes having sex down there in Washington, D.C. So I'm just going to break it to you. It comes down to this. there are indiscretions that go on, and then when I say mature, because the dude that was smacking the other girls and shoving the girls around, that's not the same. When you are in a mature relationship with somebody, and you have a mature relationship, that is totally different with two mature adults. We're not talking about mature adults who abuse other women and children. Definitely not. Doesn't fit the category. And I know that for a fact. So with that said, there are young women, there are young children. They want to date. They want to go out. They want to have fun. They want to go out with their friends. They want to have play dates. They want their kids to have fun for a change, you know. And sir, let me just tell you, unless they go through a level of security and a certain amount of questions, especially with all conspiracy that people throw out at us, let's be honest. There are people in my family, there are people around me that don't care about whether political or not. It's about abuse of power. And that is what this is about. This is about somebody taking full advantage of some people that are naive and uneducated. And just because they're uneducated doesn't mean they're not stupid. It just means they're not fully aware of what's going on. And there's a lot of young folks that are not fully aware of who they're hanging out with and who they're spending their time with. They don't know anything about those people. You know, when I go to the store and I go out to the restaurant, I don't know that person's, not connected to somebody. The problem about what we were talking about is that there were people that were coming up to me telling me this over there down in the East Liberty. I mean, this is a regional thing. All right, it's not just a random thing. It's going on every day. Every day. There's a lot of stories now just going out. We've been through something with the Ohio case, but not even like, I'd say about 2.5 years ago, there was a case with a 10-month-old little boy who was murdered by a sex offender over there in Ohio. So, I mean, once we get a fluid situation, once we have a fluid conversation with everybody, once we get, some people to, come through this and they say, hey, did you notice something was odd about this? Did you notice something? It is about comparing notes. That's why I like what you guys have going here, is that it starts to really you start to put the whole puzzle pieces together. It's not hard to figure out. I mean, when you have a sick feeling about it, go with your instincts and say, hey, I want you girls to know instinctively, if you have to do what you have to do, get somewhere safe. Call the National Hotline on Human Trafficking. Call these numbers, and I promise you that when it comes to human trafficking, especially this time of year, because of the witchcraft and the stuff that's going on and the Satanism. And this was also what was going on in Rochester with the bloodletting case. And you can also refer over to the shatterthedarkness.net. You can refer, we got several sources of information on yes, and there's a fantastic book, and I recommend it highly. I read it to cover in the middle of the night. I read it and I don't read cover to cover like this, and I recommend it highly. The book is called Dead Air by Dr. Bob Larson, and he had a radio show back in 1991, and Dr. Bob Larson's radio show was, it was profound. Now, I've talked to individuals who were Druids, or maybe not Druids. I think they were more like, I think he was, I'm trying to think of who the person was. I don't know the title of who he was. And he did tell me that they do have, what do they call that? I really don't know. Let's just say anytime you're talking about demonic possession, or in this case, ritual sexual abuse, I guess there's a certain graduation period for every victim or anyone that's ever been in this like tier of people, more or less. I guess they move up the ranks, more or less. I'm not quite sure. I know that that's kind of where it goes. It seems like it gradually increases over time. So let me refer over here to what I was looking at here earlier about this post. And this is over there in Overland, Ohio. And you could get the sense that there was also some other incidents of something about the farmer and putting a tag on somebody's neck. And some other people were doing some other sexual abusive stuff. And also This was going on at Catholic Charities, stealing property, stealing personal belongings. It's little things, believe me. I don't know where it's all going. I'm just telling you, whoever putting a tag on our neck, whoever was doing that, I just want you to know we can pick up your audio too. And we've been doing what they call counter surveillance on some individuals because we're going to get your information. And I would say use your cameras, do some things that are suggested here. And I just want to back up here a moment. This is a story about names that are mentioned about, I'm not familiar with the whole story about Lockheed Martin, to be honest with you, but I do hear that name coming up a lot. Now, this happened to us. We were over there in Branson, and there were some people that were friends with Harry Reid. And I guess, to just put it to you bluntly, there was police and FBI all over in the backyard where we were, quote, my ex-husband had agreed to work for this man and he wanted security. And I guess for whatever reasons, by the time I went over to clean their house, they had 3 houses in Branson right in the back of where I was living on Highland Avenue, which is, it's right behind, there's like a Bob Evans, right, and that was my street, right across from Bob Evans. And if you go over there, you can, I don't want to get into demonizing parents or families, especially if they're not unaware of it. That's typically in an investigation. They just would go as far as like making sure that the persons involved all have us pre-screened and interviewed, so that you know that's typically what they do to roll out any concerns. Now, anytime there's ever been missing persons issues or any topics like this, please have a photo prepared. If you ever are concerned during this time of year, this is probably and this is very valid because of a lot of assaults. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other things that go on throughout the year. This is obviously that time of year. We're talking about Domestic Violence Month, and during Domestic Violence Month, there are things you can do. So I had a bunch of clues about the ham and food. I want to know if you guys ever had any issues with anybody, prepared meals or anything. Like, I want you guys to ask the questions about, where does this food come from and where does it process? Like, what about the Chicken Purdue case and about a lot of the sex crimes and the magic foot, how they use all this stuff with voodoo and other sex practices and sex magic. I just want to ask some basic questions. Is it possible that whenever they were having all these like voodoo practices and sex magic, did they think it was just like something we dreamt up? Because it's a movie called Angel Heart, and if you refer to some of the other things, you'll get more information about some of the movies that were produced during the 1980s, like the movie Angel Heart. There's been some other movies promoting stripping, it's promoting, and this is all, quote, mainstream. So it's not underground. It's the seduction of youth. It was a post that was written on Life magazine, and it was in 1985. And there was a lot of cutting edge stuff coming out. Like, everybody was, going into the new wave and music, and that's kind of what we were all into during the 80s. It's not changed much. I mean, we like, soda pop music, basically. Once it starts getting too edgy, in this case, like when they talk about art, they don't talk about abstract art, like in the same as what that, whole thing, that whole display with Katy Perry. And Katy Perry has not invented anything new. And it says in the Bible that there's nothing new under the sun. These are all things that are called like Tower of Babel, and there's a lot of scriptural things going on today that was going on is in the beginning. So if you really want to get your studying in, I would recommend read some books or read about angels and demons. There's a real spiritual battle we're in, so that people don't go out there and start finding out like, hey, this doesn't happen. It very much does. When you're in a spiritual warfare, you got to read Ephesians 6:10.